All right, so we are recording. So let's go ahead and say hello to everyone who's actually watching right now. We're gonna go ahead and do introductions, and we'll go clockwise around what's on my screen. So starting with myself, Matt Flotecker, senior project designer here at Froglet Games. To my right is Grace,
Hi, I'm Grace. I am art director, graphic designer, whatever they need me.
and below Grace is Garrett,
Garrett, CEO.
and then to the left of Garrett we have Iggy or Isaiah. What do you prefer?
Isaiah. I'll go by. I'm wearing the Iggy and the student shirt, but I'll go by Isaiah. And I'm CTO and also whatever else is needed.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us, Iggy. Inaugural episode for yourself. So, as a reward for that, we're going to start with you, and you can go ahead and tell us in our mid-sprint check-in here what you've done so far in this sprint that you've gotten finished up that you'd like to talk about.
Sure. I'm mostly working. We call it the app shell, which is everything when you're not playing the game, everything that supports that. I'm working on the back end that supplies data to the app shell, and then also the UI of the app shell, and just trying to finish, the spec for the alpha target of all the features. So working on the store screen, working on the hangar screen, working on the port screen. Those are the three that I touched most recently. Just trying to get them up to feature parity, and then also the meta experience, like the app shell experience, feels really flat right now, and so I'm just trying to juice it up. So putting in some visual fun as you're interacting with stuff. If you redeem, if you purchase something, like having like the cart flip around and say purchased, and like spitting out crystals back and forth and like your balance and that type of stuff, I guess.
Yeah, because it's not just, a lot of the games, it's not just about the game itself, but it's all the UI infrastructure around the game that sort of like ties it all together and, keeps you invested as you're going through all the different menus that you have to deal with.
Yeah, and everything I'm working on right now, it's, ideally a designer comes in and does a better job of it. It's like high level programmer art, But I'm putting in audio, and ideally, we have an audio engineer that puts in better audio that's more appropriate for the thing. So I'm using sort of my best judgment and pulling from assets and resources that I have on hand that work. And the goal is really to make it feel, pretty good, and then someone else can come and raise those floors and make it like exceptional.
All right, cool. And then let's go ahead then and we'll jump over to Grace and get an update from you.
Well, we had a couple of 3D artists come on board, which is super exciting. And they're going to help us out with making the ships. So I have been working on mood boards for specifically the Sparrow and the Serpent. And would you like me to share my screen for that? Because I do have the mood board. I'm still working on the concept art.
Go for it.
But I can show you what I have so far. Okay. So usually when I do my mood boards, I break them up by what kind of makes sense for me compartmentally. So this, just to kind of give a bigger overview, I have a connection to the Notion page for mechanics, just in case you want to look that up to see if, what you're designing matches the mechanics and it reinforces those. Just general wing inspo, because the chassis we had that I previewed with Rochelle was looking pretty good. But I wanted to make them more like fishy because it was very jet plane from what I saw. So this is the general wing inspiration. We have the sea dragon, and I was thinking we could do something along the lines of like feathers, like mimicking that feather style, but like making it more aquatic. So there's a couple different directions for that. I was going to try out something that like feels more kelpy and something that might be really fun to like kind of wave and animate, which, mainly this seahorse just rocks for that. Zoom in on these guys. Something like these stems and these reeds like look very feather-like, but also like much more like fins. So I'm going to experiment with those. It's just kind of a clearer view of maybe some different kinds of shapes if we were going to simplify it, since we are going low poly. This guy is a sea dragon slug. Yeah, I leave little comments for myself. So this guy is awesome. Obviously, these are still very wing-like, but in kind of like an odd way. These things are super poisonous, so if you don't touch them, if you see them in real life, but it might be fun to have this kind of shape along the side, and maybe like smaller, different like tinier thrusters down the back, which would be probably floating, much like
a
our
high-speed drone or something, right?
yeah, like something like funnels, maybe. I don't know. But this thing seemed like a pretty good place to start in terms of just how like alien it looks.
I don't know if we could actually. I don't know if we would want to do it, but I do love the coloration on that one.
Yeah, we could definitely take inspiration from these lines, especially with our highlight lines and just the gradients along here. It might be kind of fun to have something you could probably like picture it animating, like powering up the gun, just kind of like sucking up energy through the gun, maybe that way. Might be kind of cool. Let's see what I got here. This is kind of like for the tail feather, just to kind of remind me what Sparrow's tail feathers actually do if we need like something that's specifically a rudder, because we may have to make this one look like a little more gunship, spaceship-like. And then we just have like a real classic flying fish in case we want to do something that is still pretty, it's still much more spaceship, but we want to, still bring some aquatic into it. And I do like the way that these look. It would probably be more a texture deal than a shape, but it's still good to consider, especially since these things look really different when they're closed. So that might be an interesting way to have them animate when they're slowing down or speeding up, just to have them like tuck in versus like fan out, just to like really emphasize speed. And another way I was looking at that was literally like sparrow wings, because they do dive a lot. Like they're very like they tuck in and then they dive. So it'd be really fun to mimic that, like have the wings like tuck in, pinch in, and then dive, or even this like fun shape that they make. Like the Klingon ships. I've always kind of really liked this shape, so that could be another shape to experiment with for either like silhouette or animation if we have like a big break or something like that, just to really like emphasize like we're stopping. This is a bonus sea slug. Isn't it cute? It's a bunny. So this is like a general style shape rules guide that I have for our artists, just kind of saying that we have a lot of stuff that's disconnected, and to keep that in mind when you're working on body shapes. So a lot of this came from the game Readout, and the inspiration for making stuff that is like much more geometric, because we are going low poly, as I said before. But they have a really nice way of making the engines like float, but not feel like a separate part of the ship. And then also grants them a lot more little small tweaky animation features that I think are really cool. So this is just like the general example of how to, fuselages and things like that. Like you can zoom in really tight here. So even in this ship, right, like even if it didn't have the pod racy stuff on it, they have like little bits of the ship that are thrusters, funnels, things like that are separate. And they do move around when you turn, so they kind of like help the player figure out how they're maneuvering through the space. And it's very clean, it's very simple, and I think that's something that we've been able to harness too. I think it's going to really help. So that's kind of like a keep in mind shape keys kind of thing. And I found this really cool plane. I don't know the name of it. I will find the name of it and stick that on there. But it kind of reminded me of a much more bird-like but mechanical, whatever you call this thing. Body?
Fuselage.
Fuselage. So it kind of matched the general shape of what Rochelle had, kind of like mimicking a beak of a sparrow. So this was going to be another experimentation of kind of like maybe figure out a way to merge this shape. Although it does kind of remind me of a paper airplane a little bit. To see if we could like merge this shape. Maybe that would be something to have cool, like a fold up animation or something. And this was just like another way to interpret the sparrow tail over here, just into like actual geometric shapes that I thought was just like really nice to have as a reminder. And that is the gist of my mood board. So I'm going to use this to make some concept sketches, hopefully 2 or 3, and then we'll see where we go from there.
All right. Cool. Let's go ahead and drop back to the perfect for that one there. So, when do you? So that's the stuff you're working on. You're working on getting the mood boards finished, or you're actually going to try to get the concepts done as well. Then.
The mood boards are good to go. So next step would be concepts.
Okay. Cool. All right, Garrett, you want to go ahead and show off what you got?
Do it. Yeah, so this is our lava lamp scene, and I can show off some of the stuff that Ig was talking about. So he's got.
Look at him go.
I pulled latest, so we should have the juice.
Nope.
Oh yeah.
Hey, there we go.
Nice.
Oh yeah, watch ad. Well, I've never wanted to watch an ad more in my life.
Let's see. So then, if you spend this, so that's like rewards going out in, and then if we press this, we should see them.
No. This
Nope.
is you should see them on the captains, but there's some issue.
Oh, I
Those are
don't
not-
have
those
enough
are
forms.
board cards. Yeah.
All right, that part's not ready
Oh,
for
you
prime time.
probably, you probably did is you probably went to the store before the network initialized.
That old trick, yeah. Yeah, Echo and I were trying to get that to work the other day, and we have some troubleshooting to do there. But,
That's why I
what
want
else
to
we
put that initializing buffer.
We got port, and you got ship selection for squad assembly, captain selection. Port's coming together. Let's see, hangar. Nice. We got, I think last time, so we got like the daily challenge up now. So then, yeah, if I was just the higher I was to score there, then those would come in, and then my score gets put to a leaderboard, which is then shared. So next up, we've got Sparrow. Let's try him out. So we've made some good progress there. So that's this character here, the Sparrow. It takes more of a top-down view, which a lot of players expect, and it's really just built from the ground up, trying to make something that delivers on what people expect from a space shooter, expect from the kind of game that they think we are. So we have a lot of unique mechanics that we'll be teaching players over time, but we really want to just create something that starts by, like we said, delivering on what they kind of expect the game to be. So they expect it to just have guns where you're just kind of flying around shooting things, and this is much more satisfying than I expected it to be, to just trace your paths over and destroy blocks. And we don't limit it. It's full auto, but you gain a little bit of maneuverability when you're not shooting your guns, which gives you one reason to not shoot. He's also has friendly fire, so this is my own trail that I'm leaving behind, and I can shoot that too. So that's another reason to not shoot. He's got a go fast button. I haven't implemented it fully yet, but the intent is that this is gonna overheat and be limited in its usage.
I just
And
want
then
to
the last thing.
I just want to
What's
ask
that?
I just want to ask really quick too. That this is all stuff that you've done like from the start of the sprint.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I was like, that's a lot.
Yeah. And yeah, so these guns came together, but I mean, that's a lot of it is because we're building, so we'd already had object pools implemented for a projectile system. So we were able to just really use an existing projectile system, and it just worked. And so it was really just about tuning the parameters and making it have a high rate of fire and moving the camera up. So these are all like really simple things to put into the game now that we have this foundation for building new classes and things. So it's really an example of just kind of using the tools we've already put a lot of work into. And then the last thing that it has, so every character has a create power, a maneuver power, and a disrupt power. So his disrupt power is obvious with these guns, and his maneuver power is that overheating go fast button. But then a lot of characters are leaving behind a trail. So leaving behind a trail is not a very intuitively obvious way that you're creating volume, because you can't really see it. So I'm leaving a trail right now, but you can't really see it. So we wanted something where your introductory character would create volume in front of him. So he has a missile, and this also reminds me, takes us back to Subspace is what this character reminds me of, where you just have a bunch of little shooting, guns and missiles, right? So he has his guns, and then his missile is this little trajectory. Now, there's going to be an explosion where it'll blow up blocks in front of it, but then it'll leave behind a little firework display of blocks. So he actually creates a very substantial amount of volume in front of him, so he can really see it and be aware that yes, this is a volume creation game. And then the last part of his kit is he's bouncy. So again, this was as easy as just setting him to bouncy because that was already implemented with the squirrel. But he bounces off the environment. Again, just trying to make him inviting and approachable to new players.
Nice. Very cool. I love the missiles actually. I don't think I saw this before. Where like they blow up and they create that nice volume up there, and it's like ice. It's like if water splashed and froze. You know, it kind of had that sort of like feel to it.
I'll share one more thing actually. Well, is we just implemented momentum and mass into the game too. So now projectiles have mass, and they actually deliver momentum. So if I shoot bigger blocks, then they bust up slowly. Whereas if I shoot
Oh,
smaller
yeah.
blocks, they bust away much faster. It's kind of fun.
All right, cool. All right, excellent. That looks great. And all we have to do now is get the model in place as well, and then we'll have like the full picture of the Sparrow taking place. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and talk about what we're planning on doing for the rest of this sprint. And Iggy, let's go ahead and start with you.
Sure. Yeah, so my goal is basically to get the app to a point where there's nothing that is so, preliminarily implemented or non-existent that it's a distraction. So it's like, okay, nothing's pulling you out of it. You're like, oh, there's room for polish, there's room for improvement and all that, but none of it's so like primitive or, egregiously rough that it pulls you out of the thing. And so I'm getting placeholder art in for all the captains, I'm trying to get placeholder stuff in for the ships. We have like high quality models and stuff coming online in the pipeline, but just in the app shell before we have that, just something that's like less jarringly obvious, so that if we show it to someone, they're like, okay, yeah, I get a sense of it. Like, I mean, like, hey, all this is like placeholder, but at the same time, like they can pay attention to the fundamental experience rather than be yanked out of that by like really jarringly clip art type placeholders.
Cool.
So really what I want to do is I want to get the app functionality more or less complete for the 5 main screens, which are hangar, port, store, home, and arcade. And we're probably somewhere around 80%. And so I'm trying to be heads down engineering, getting those feature complete. Some of it's like baked back end, like it's local, and then we can migrate it all to be the back end, so that if you pick up one phone or you pick up another phone, your data ports. And then otherwise just like finding all the floors for where it's really flat. And there's no sound when you press this thing. There's no animation when like something rewarding is happening. Like oh, I'm claiming a daily reward, but it should feel good. There should be a little bit of dopamine for that, And so I might not finish all of that this sprint, but I'm hoping to be like 90%.
Cool. All right, cool. Grace, how about yourself?
I am focusing on getting art to the 3D team, so that they can build what they need to build, and we can get those models in as soon as we can. Otherwise, probably for floor raising, I think jets would probably be the biggest, like the easiest thing to raise for at least like some slight additional polish. So I'll probably be focusing on getting the artists what they need, first and foremost, and then I'll be jumping into probably FX afterwards and just kind of like alternating those two things as we need them.
All right. And Garrett.
Yeah, my perpetual focus is always just making sure everybody's unblocked. So right now, a nice way to do that is to enable the gameplay engineers to have their own swim lanes that minimizes how much interference people have when they're trying to make async contributions to the same thing, right? So we're all making the same game, but it has, say, 12 mini games that are these we're going to try to get 6 characters in the game by November, for our kind of end of year build target, and each of those characters has 2 mini games each. So those are mostly spec'd out, and some of them have been developed, and they're powering the daily challenge. But we'd like to get all 12 in place by November. So those are the perfect thing for someone to just do a deep dive and really build. It's like building a whole game. They're building, but it's a little mini game that will populate our daily challenge. So there's 12 to get done, and just getting those started, making sure that everything's going smooth, and so that I can hand those off to minigame developers. And then also, same idea where artists, just making sure that we're staying ahead of art direction with story direction. So get the backstories in place to really enable artists to be bringing these characters to life when they know kind of the plot beats of their arc and what motivates them and how they got to the Hyper C, those kind of things. Just a handful, that gives you a window into some of the parallel projects that we got in flight. So for instance, the last one that comes to mind is Robert is going to be wiring up all of the elemental abilities so that as classes get power-ups or upgrade, then there'll be a particular parameter like their speed or the size of their explosion that will get better in the game and in the metagame. And just making sure that he has an exhaustive list of all the different parameters that need to be wired up there, for example.
Sweet. And then the nice thing is that I've consolidated my stuff down to 3 things: editing the video, updating the sprints, putting together documentation. That's it. So that works. So with that, Iggy, thank you very much for joining us. It was great to have you aboard. Hopefully have you for more going forward. And let's give it thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next mid-sprint check-in.
Bye.